when we talk about space and we talk about satellites, what is it we're talking about? Generally speaking, in terms of ESA business applications, we're talking about these 5 things. We're talking about global navigation satellite systems, satellite communications, satellite imagery, sometimes called Earth observation or remote sensing, but also space weather and microgravity. I'm just going to touch on those bottom 2 very briefly because we're going to focus on these top 3. But the bottom 2, when I say space weather, we're not talking about the use of satellites to model and predict weather on Earth. That would fall under Earth observation. What we're talking about are services that support our defenses against the sun, essentially. That interaction between the sun's photosphere and the Earth's magnetosphere, which creates space weather, which creates the aurora. We saw recently Starlink from SpaceX had some severe problems when a solar storm caused some of their satellites some issues. So it's around how we can protect our orbital and earthbound assets from these electromagnetic phenomena. Microgravity in the space environment, as launch costs have dropped from $50,000 a kilo down to about $2,000 a kilo, so they continue to fall to below 1,000, maybe even down to below 100 in the coming decade or so. It becomes more and more appropriate to use the space environment for earthbound applications. For example, insulin grown in space is 4 times more effective as a medicine because the crystalline structure that forms is more pure because it's not forming under the effects of gravity. Same with fiber optics, which can be 10 times more effective at carrying data when they're grown in space. So how can we use the space environment to develop products and bring them back to Earth? That's all I'm going to say about those 2. We're going to focus on GNSS, SATCOMs, and satellite imagery. Global navigation satellite systems. Sometimes people refer to as GPS or SatNav. That is inaccurate. GPS is the American system, formerly called Navstar, but there's also the Russian GLONASS system. There's Baidu from China, Galileo from the EU, as well as a number of regional offers like Navic in India and QZSS in Japan and Asia Pacific, and multiple what we call ESPAS. These are satellite-based augmentation systems. For example, the European Commission operates a satellite that sits way up, 36,000 miles up, and it sits there and just acts as a beacon. And what that does is that augments the Galileo system and other GNSS systems that are passing overhead. So what you get, so what is a GNSS satellite? What it is basically a big old atomic clock in space, and they're maybe 20,000 kilometers away, and they orbit the Earth, sending out very accurate timing signals, and your device picks up at least 4 of those signals and calculates its position. So with GNSS, we've got multiple satellites in multiple constellations, and so when your device can detect them, it's much more accurate. It's much more, it's more a ubiquitous service that can be accessed from anywhere on Earth. Critically, we think of GNSS in terms of navigation and positioning, which is true, but actually the timing signals are really, really important. We use the timing signals to make sure that these huge switches in the national grid are switched on and off at accurate times. You know, these are nanosecond accuracy that we can get from there, as well as centimeter accuracy in terms of positioning data. We're used to 5 to 7 meters positioning accuracy with GNSS. We're already down to about 20 centimeter accuracy with Galileo. And what these ESPAS systems that they enable even greater accuracy. And they can be combined with ground stations with various different methods on the ground of further augmenting those signals to make them even more accurate in terms of positioning. So the applications, of course, we're all familiar with navigation and route optimization. We ordered a pizza, we can see where the pizza driver is and how close it is to us. But master clock synchronization, integrity markers for blockchain, for cybersecurity, there are enormous applications here. If you can get atomic clock scale accurate timings anywhere on Earth, you can use that in a number of IoT and security applications. Of course, worldwide geolocation, time stamping. We're all familiar with satellite navigation. The challenge is we sometimes go, well, that's not really space, is it? It's just my phone. You know, all I do is push the button on my phone and it's done. But the reality is, when I drop that pin, I've interacted with $1 billion worth of spaceships. So how do we use those GNSS signals? And we'll touch on that shortly. Satellite communications, SATCOMs. We're all familiar with SATCOMs. We put the breakfast TV on as we're getting ready, and there's an interview with someone on the other side of the world, and there's normally a 1.8 second delay, which can be very frustrating for both the interviewer, the interviewee, and you, the viewer. That's because traditional telecommunication satellites sit 36,000 kilometers from Earth. On this graphic, you can see this long graphic with the Earth there. You've got LEO, low Earth orbit, MEO, medium Earth orbit, and GEO, which is geostationary orbit. If this were to be at scale, LEO would be further to the right. It would be practically touching the surface of the Earth there. MEO would be where LEO is, but GEO would be several feet off the screen. It's really far away. It takes the signals time to get up, time to come back. There's processing involved. What we're now seeing, as you can see on the right there, the GEO with the traditional big satellites, what we're now seeing is LEO and MEO satellite constellations. Now, we use the term bent pipe, as in signal goes up, signal comes down. That's the traditional way of doing things. But what we're seeing now with LEO and MEO satellite constellations for SATCOMs are mesh networks. These are lots of very small, very fast-moving satellites that are much closer to Earth. And that means that you get a much lower latency. You're not getting 1.8 seconds. What you're getting is closer to, let me get this right, 0.2 seconds, which is about the same that you'll get on your terrestrial copper or fiber-based broadband. So this is traditionally, SATCOMs has just been about transmitting data, uploading data in a fairly old-fashioned one way, another way, fashion, whereas now with these low Earth orbit constellations, we're able to interact with data in a way that you and I are much more familiar with. You click an icon and it turns up. So broadband from space is now possible. So it's about global access to data and services. You know, you don't need Jodrell Bank. You don't need a huge dish to access these services anymore, and I'll show you that in a second. So it's a backup for terrestrial communications as well. And of course, improve security and integrity. If you can have your own dedicated data transfer link, that is helpful there. And high-speed, low-latency internet for remote areas. Now that Starlink is online, now that OneWeb is online, we're starting to see communities around the world who have been traditionally unable to access online services like education and healthcare now be able to do so in an affordable way. There are, this is really exciting, dedicated IoT, Internet of Things solutions. There are whole satellite constellations up there that are the size of a shoebox. Each satellite is the size of a shoebox and they're dedicated to IoT. These are not broadband satellites. This is low power, low bandwidth. If you just need a few kilobytes up and down, if your asset just needs to say everything's okay, everything's okay, everything's not okay, then that can be achieved now anywhere on Earth. So if we look at this very happy gentleman, he is standing there with his Starlink uplink. So if this is about the size of the satellite you get on the side of your house, but if you've got one of them, you know you've got to phone an engineer, he's got to come out, he's highly trained, he's got to point it at the satellite, which is due south in the UK. If it gets knocked, you're in trouble. With this, it turns up in a box, you plug it into the wall to get power, you plug your Wi-Fi router into the other end of it, and you point it vaguely at the sky, and it will work, because it's with these low Earth orbit mesh network satellites. It's a phased array. So very, very easy setup. This is an antenna for a dedicated IoT solution from a company called Hyber. There are others available as well. But you can see the size here. This is very low power, low bandwidth for IoT solutions. You can see how you could fit this into a range of different assets. So satellite communications has really moved on in the last few years. Earth observation, EO. I'm not going to dive right into this. I'm going to leave this on the screen here for you. Basically, you've got passive and you've got active. With passive, you can, this is seeing, you know, this is, you're looking at light, usually from the sun, being reflected. So you can see in optical, infrared, ultraviolet, near infrared, microwave, and you can combine different spectra. For example, you can look down at crops, and if you know the certain wavelength of light which that crop is going to absorb when it is healthy, or a certain wavelength of light it is going to absorb when it is not healthy because of a certain disease. You can see that from space. You can detect that specific wavelength from space, just as an example. And we can also use microwave radiometry, which is a second order effect of radar altimetry, which is on the other side, the active side, to assess water vapor, water columns, cloud content, these sorts of things. A huge range. Now we're talking 30 centimeter accuracy here. That means that each pixel is about 30 centimeters on a side in your image. So the whole thing from that Will Smith film, Enemy of the State, where they can, see your face if you look up, or read the newspaper over your shoulder, isn't true. That doesn't exist. 30 centimeter accuracy. I'll show you an image that is 30 centimeters in a moment. You'll see how accurate that is. Active. This is when a satellite sends out a pulse of data, receives the data back. So radar. Radar, think of this as active as feeling, as texture. So synthetic aperture radar, SAR, can detect ships. It can see oil spills because the reflection of the radar signal is different from the oil than it is from the water, that texture. Infrastructure monitoring. You can get millimeter surface topography readings from radar altimetry. That means that you can see subsidence. You can see, if you're in the insurance sector, where a building is, how in its construction stage, has it been affected by a storm, for example. LiDAR, very similar to radar, only it uses ultraviolet instead of radio wavelengths, and this can be used for monitoring glacial loss, and also for detecting the wind, for detecting atmospheric aerosols, sulfates in the atmosphere, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, sniffing the atmosphere with these active systems. So the applications here is for the monitoring of land and marine parameters, monitoring of infrastructure and assets, 30 centimeters or so and over. Critically, this is the big one, change detection over time. These satellites are not in geosynchronous orbit. They're not sat over the same part of the planet. They are moving around. And so you get a change detection. Sometimes it's every week, sometimes it could be every day. So you get a build-up of images of the asset you want to look at. That means you can look at change detection. It means you can start to build in predictive monitoring as well. An example of that, this rather ghostly image is a synthetic aperture radar image of Manhattan. And you can see the docks on the left-hand side there, what looks like a skyscraper in the middle, several of them there. So this is a 30 centimeter accuracy. So every single pinpoint here is 30 centimeters across. If you go on to optical now, so this is a 30 centimeter accurate image from space. You can see you couldn't read a newspaper over this, but you can see which container is which. You can see which ship is which. You can even see which car is which. I'm going to fly through now, just in a nutshell. That's GNSS, SATCOMs, satellite imagery right there. These slides will be made available as well. A few examples of companies that are using these technologies anyway. Orbital Witness uses Earth observation, and this is for the property and insurance sector. So they have this service which they've set up, you can see in the window here, and that is around boundary issues. Is anyone else encroaching on the property? I have trees falling on it. Is there a legal building going on? And this helps them to red flag problems early. It accelerates and enhances due diligence within the sector, and it allows the insurance inquiries to be done at reduced cost. And you can see there's a slide on the bottom here. I've got a big screen, I don't know if you have. It says there, June 5th, 2016, that's when this image is from. It goes all the way up to October 2019, actually goes all the way back to 2007. So you can slide through and see the change, see what's happening on that site. Anyway, this is a company based near me in Lancashire. They supply very basic mobile phones for the elderly and for the vulnerable. What they came to us for was they wanted to build in geofencing, which we help them do. They're now doing this. It's a non-invasive monitoring service. So if my granddad gets up on a Monday and goes to church, and then he goes to the betting shop, and then he goes to the pub, then we can set that up as a geofence. We know we're not spying on him, but we know if he doesn't go to these places. We know if why is he suddenly at the railway line? Why isn't he there? Why is he here? And we can set up these automated responses, and this gives peace of mind for users and loved ones. It's also used as a lone worker system as well. AWOL Media Productions. This is a company that takes photographs of people running marathons. If you've ever done that, it takes 2 days to get the photographs of you running the marathon into your hands, because there's 10,000 people running and 1 million photographs are being taken by 20 photographers all along the way in HD. They've got to be quality checked, they've got to be assigned to the runner, and they've got to be uploaded. AWOL used edge computing on their cameras to really speed that up, to do the facial recognition, to do the quality checking. But it still took 2 days to get it online. That's the global standard in this industry. So we help them use satellite communications. Now they are the only company on earth that can do that in less than 2 minutes. So they've really changed their sector here with the use of AI and satellite technologies. ESA Business Applications funded the last 3 companies you've just looked at there. So what do we look for? We look for a service that is designed by customers. This is about a market demand, not a technology push. It's got to be a feasible technology. It's not a satellite that's going to be launched in 5 years. It has to be an active satellite system that you're using, and it needs to be viable and sustainable market. We're not about research and development. This is about market utilization, and Victoria is going to pick up on that shortly. We're going to talk to you today about the open call, but we do have competitive tenders available. As ambassadors, we can point you in the right direction for these, but we can't help in the same way we can with the open call. I'll read through very quickly. We've got space for aviation safety evolution, for resilient utilities, for tourism, for future hospitals, for rail, for safety and security, for digital supply chains, for applications supporting digital transformation and public safety, for digital transformation and the green economy, for digital transformation and green utilities specifically. And I mentioned earlier about sending stuff into space to see what can be done for it on Earth. That's commercial applications enabled by space environments. We will send this to you later on. I've now spoken for longer than I should have done, so I'm going to hand over to the marvelous Victoria Christmas, who's going to talk you through the application process. Thanks, Victoria.
Sorry, got a little bit overzealous there with the mouse. Thanks very much. I was going to say I'm going to give you a quick run through. Can everybody hear me? Can somebody tell me they can hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Perfect. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit, so do bear with me. I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour of what to expect, how long this process might take, what you need to do, what you can expect from ESA and the ambassadors, a little bit about how to manage your content and what support is available from the Ambassador Network. So I'm going to be speaking, as Alan said, this is about the open call, also known as direct negotiation. So while there are an absolute plethora of opportunities out there, this is the area where you can get the most engagement from the Ambassador Network team and the most support. So I think it's really important to state that all ideas are considered. There is no sort of hard and fast rule of one is preferred more than the other. Alan's just given you a wide range of applications of space data and tech from organisations that genuinely didn't use space data before they started working with us. So it is all industry welcome. You will get honest and candid guidance with the direct call. In that we can help you shape and guide where you're going. So ambassador contact details will be there at the end. They're there to play the role of critical friend. They're there to make sure that you can use them as a sounding board. So please do either contact them, contact the Centre of Excellence in the first instance, and they can put you in touch with the right person. So that's really everything that I had to say there. Regional support, we've got, there's a map that I'll show you at the end. Obviously, COVID has brought about slightly less regional boundaries, so there are plenty of people around to support you. And despite the fact that it does say at the bottom of the ESA Business Applications website that there is sometimes more than 50% match funding available, in the UK it would be 50% match funding. So you can ask for more, but I imagine the answer will be it'll be 50% match funding. So the next bit I'm going to run through is kind of what we can do, what this series of webinars are designed to do, and the workshop, again, I'll tell you at the end a little bit more about that if you want some focused support if you decide to go down this route. So where do you start? If you have decided that yes, this is the route for you, and that you do have a fabulous idea that needs some space data or tech to integrate to take you to the next level, these are the questions you need to be thinking about. It's really important to remember that ESA Business Applications is very much focused on solving customer problems. So customer engagement is absolutely key. And there is a definition with ESA that the customer is, broadly speaking, defined as the company or user that will be paying for the service, but there may be an end user as well that may not necessarily pay for the service but might benefit from it. So for example, if you were using GNSS in a tourism application, for example, it might be that the National Trust are paying for the app, but the end user would be you and me on a day out. And it might be that there is an application that we would then pay the National Trust for that privilege or not. But what ESA are interested in is your paying customer. So that level of engagement is really important, and you do need to demonstrate that at the APQ stage, which is the first stage of the process. Innovation is really important. There's a question dedicated to that right from the beginning in the APQ about understanding what is innovative. It doesn't have to be the next whiz-bang widget. You could be bringing space technology to an industry that's not already using it. That kind of business innovation is equally as acceptable as any kind of new tech that you're bringing in as well. I should say that this is all downstream applications. So this business applications funding is available to those folk that are using data and tech derived from satellites and satellite technology, and that this particular funding stream isn't about upstream in terms of putting things up into space. So just to be clear on the difference there for this funding stream. What do you know about space data and what space asset are you using? Believe it or not, this sometimes gets missed out. There is an entire question in this first pass APQ, the activity pitch questionnaire, that asks you about the space asset that you're using and why. So if you have a fabulous idea and you don't yet know what that is, then please do engage with the team and talk to them, because they might be able to put you in touch with somebody who has that particular expertise, or they might just be able to play the role of critical friend and actually bounce those ideas around for you. I should say ESA are not interested in your IP. So this 50% match funding comes really with a view to elevate your business and to ensure its longevity, really, from a UK PLC point of view. Does the timeline fit? This is quite important. This is not a quick route to funding. Neither does it take forever if you hit the right milestones. So if, again, you decide this is right for you, we can give you some clues and ideas of how to make sure that that pace continues. But I would say it's a not to put all your eggs in one basket scenario. Make sure this can run concurrently with your existing business and your roadmap and the projects that you've got, and that you're not sort of putting everything on this one, because the timescales can sometimes shift. Okay, next slide, please, Mr. Cross. Okay, this is the one that I say, please don't screenshot this and put it on Twitter, because this is in big handfuls. This is what you could potentially expect. So first pass, these are months. First pass, engage with the South Coast Centre of Excellence and or your ambassador, please. Again, there is a question in the APQ that asks who you have engaged with, how you've come into the programme. There is a benefit to making sure that you follow this route. There have been applications that have come in that have had no contact, which you can absolutely do, download from the website and fill that form in at your peril. I would guard against that, because there's a lot of insight and information that can be shared with you from the experiences that we have in these applications. So engage with your team, certainly in the first instance, use that critical friend role, have those discussions about what it is that you're trying to achieve and how you're going to do it. Then start to think about what you're going to put in that application. I've spent a lot of time with companies working on their APQ. the activity pitch questionnaire. It is only, in inverted commas, 8 pages long. However, it is also only 8 pages long, in which you have to fit your entire business case in fairly short order. So there is a skill involved in being able to fit all of that into those tiny little boxes. And again, these guys can certainly advise and guide you on how to do that. We'll talk to you at the end about, there's a workshop that we're going to be running to help you get from A to B with that APQ. So we'll come to that at the end if that's something that interests you. I would say start to finish, bearing in mind everybody still has a full-time job and a living to earn, that about 2 to 3 weeks would potentially be the time you could expect to come in and come out of that activity pitch questionnaire, send it to your ambassador, have it reviewed, have a chat about it. And then the next step, and this is only done in the UK of all the member states in ESA, is a face-to-face pitch. The UK Space Agency, who fund this programme, ESA Manager UK, say fund it, are very interested in you. They want to know who you are, where you come from, what your roadmap looks like, what level of engagement that you've got with your customer, and really genuinely interested in, as I said earlier, the longevity of your business. So the face-to-face pitch happens probably within about 2 weeks of you submitting your APQ. It has members of ESA and the UK Space Agency and your friendly ambassador in attendance, and it is about 20 minutes Q&A, I beg your pardon, 20 minutes pitch, 20 minutes Q&A, and then 20 minutes where you go off and breathe a sigh of relief and they talk about you and decide whether or not this is a great investment, which hopefully it will be. So that's something that happens in the UK. Then you will get a green, red or amber light. If you've gone through your ambassador, then hopefully you'll be going for a green or amber light. Green is straight to outline proposal. Amber is yes and. Yes, and we'd like a little bit more information on this, or but we're not sure about so-and-so, please could you clarify? So the outline proposal is approximately 25 pages. There's a lot of information that is lifted straight from the APQ, so it's worth having a look at that documentation before you start this entire process. The same for the full proposal, which is the point where you have to provide evidence of your match funding. At month 9, and I say this very carefully, you could potentially be on contract award. There are a number of bumps in the road that can happen in this 1 to 9 month process that could mean it takes longer than this. I have heard once that this happened in 6 weeks. I can only imagine that all of the prevailing winds were moving in the right direction, because that is very unusual. So I say this is not a quick route to finance, but if somebody's going to offer you 50% match funding with no interest in your IP, it's not to be sniffed at. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. Okay, so as I mentioned, you've got 3 stages. You've got the APQ, the outline proposal, and the full proposal. And these are the purposes for each of these stages. So the APQ will allow ESA and the UK Space Agency to quickly assess whether they think that fundamentally you have a good idea that they are interested in, that has good innovation and good customer engagement. And that's wrapped up with that pitch, to that fairly quick 1 hour pitch to ESA and UK Space Agency. You'll get the green light or the amber light within about 48 hours of that pitch. So this is a really pacey piece. And then you'll need to move to outline proposal, which as I said, is about that 25 pages. And it's slightly more detail on the information you've already provided in the APQ. There's nothing radically new in it. It's just a further detail for where you're going. So this is the point where you engage, you leave your ambassador and they hand you over to your ESA technical officer, who will then take you through the rest of the process. It's a good idea to keep your national delegation informed. You will have their contact details from the pitch and the APQ. So literally just a quick email to UK Space Agency to say, we're moving on, this is when we might be delivering our next version of our proposal. Once that's been approved by your ESA technical officer, then you move to your full proposal. This can go as quickly or as slowly as you like. They like you not to take more than a year. Should something like a pandemic get in your way, then there's been a little bit of leeway with some of these applications. But there is a desire for you to move through this as quickly as possible. So keep engaged with them, keep talking to them, and explain any issues that you have in terms of time or issues that challenge your programme. Before you submit your full proposal, again, you need to engage with the UK Space Agency, and they will provide you with a letter of authorisation once they've read your proposal, and then you can go through onto the Technical Evaluation Board and hopefully contract signature. So you can see where that 9 months could fluctuate, probably already if you're reflecting on your own business of what things might get in the way, where you have different issues in terms of projects that you've already got going. I would suggest that if this is the process that you decide to go for and it fits well with what you're doing, August is a very quiet time in ESA. There's a huge amount of leave that is taken, so try not to submit any proposals in the middle of August, because you might find that they wait in an inbox until September. Okay, next slide, please. If this sounds like something that fits quite well with an idea that you've got, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. Where did your idea come from? How engages your customer? What work can you do to make this very, very appealing to somebody who's going to invest, let's be honest, taxpayers' money, and they do so very diligently, into your idea? The innovation is key. As I said, there are questions right at the APQ stage. They follow through into outline proposal and more details required. It sits right in the middle here. What space asset am I using? I have seen applications where there is no space asset identified at all. And it's a little difficult to progress something when the key to the door is missing. So obvious though it sounds, do check with your Centre of Excellence or your ambassador to make sure that actually what you've identified as your space asset and data is in play, is appropriate and exists. That would be grand. Back again to the timeline, I dedicated a whole slide to it because it's really important that you understand that, as I say, this is not a quick process, neither does it have to last forever. So make sure that it fits in line with what your business needs. ESA are very interested in a well-bounded project. So if you have a very broad project, can you focus on an element of it? Can you identify how that piece is going to work? What does it look like in your business roadmap? How are you going to develop that? The output to this project is key. I would ask you to look at the newspaper headline in a year's time, and ESA will be reporting you as a success story. What will it say? So that well-bounded project for an output, and in the case of a feasibility study, that potentially could mean that you disprove it. It doesn't have to necessarily be a preconceived positive outcome for a feasibility, but approve or disprove is equally a successful outcome. So for a demonstration project, and this APQ, I should say, sorry, is the same for both a feasibility and a demonstration project. Make sure that you've got a really focused project. Again, use people, have the discussion, get to that point where you really understand what it is you're going to deliver and how you're going to do it. In addition to ESA wanting a well-bounded project, the UK Space Agency are genuinely interested in their return on investment. So when you look at this activity pitch questionnaire and you're thinking about your business case, it's not just 7 pages, I'll give it a go and I'll throw some bullets in. It genuinely won't wash. Because of the investment they're making with taxpayers' money, the diligence that goes into this is extensive. So you have to make sure that that work that you have done is reflected in this APQ. And I can genuinely hand on heart say, if you do the work at the APQ stage, then the outline proposal and the full proposal happens much more smoothly, because you're not having to reinvigorate your thinking, or why did I quite do that? I'm not quite sure where that came from. You've got all the answers already. So keep that really focused project if you can, and make sure that you're looking to understand how you will commercialize this project on its completion. So who is your competition? Please don't say there isn't any, because there is always somebody snapping at your heels. You just might not know about them yet. It might be that they're not using space tech yet, or that they own an adjacent industry. So really look at that competitor analysis and make sure that you understand where you fit in the market you are targeting. That leads to what market share can I achieve? Again, there is a very specific question in the activity pitch questionnaire about which market are you targeting, how much of the market share do you intend to achieve over what period of time? So nobody's going to hold your feet to the fire in 5 years' time and say, you said it on page 3. But you do need to be able to evidence where you've come from in your thinking. So it isn't just a, I'll put something down and it'll be all right. You need to be able to evidence that you've actually done the groundwork. Finally, I would say, does this fit with your business strategy? It sounds like a really obvious one, but when you're bringing in some new technology and you're looking at using space data or tech, you need to make sure that actually it is consistent with where you're going. If you're growing organically, fantastic. If you're moving into an adjacent market using space technology and data, then that's fabulous, but please make sure that it fits somehow into your strategy. And it's not just, oh, well, Bob said, can I do this? So I thought I'd give it a go. Because again, ESA and the UKSA would like to know that you're a sound investment and not, I don't want to say maverick, because I've got some fabulous and maverick people who are doing amazingly well, but you need to be able to show the connection of how you've got to where you are. Ideally, we would love it if actually your customer had come to you with a problem and you had identified that space data could solve that problem, and that's your project. That would be an ideal. So that's a few more things to think about. I'm going to speed up even more. Sorry, let's go. Next slide. In really broad terms, the APQ is split into 4 sections. So section 1 is the company background. This is a tick box exercise. This is genuinely where ESA will start to assess your capacity and capability to deliver. So it asks some standard questions around company size, turnover, whether you're a consortium, how you found out about this, have you engaged with your ambassador. Those kind of things are the first pass. That's what they first see about you. And what skills and expertise do you have to deliver this project? Not a company summary of 25 years doing this, that, and the other. What skills and experience do you have to deliver this successfully? I would then look at section 4. So you have the capacity and capability to deliver. So implementation and delivery. Are you okay with working with a very waterfall project management system? All of the documentation, there's a link at the in here. If you go to business.esa.int, in the bottom right-hand corner is a tiny hyperlink called documents. And in that space is the APQ, the outline proposals, some guidance on terminology, the business model canvas, which ESA do use to review any applications. So stick this on your wall. If you can't fill all of that in at the moment, then you've got a little bit of work to do before you move forward. And that's where you're going to be putting in a very high level project plan and looking at some of your risks. So it's pretty comprehensive, even though it's only 7 pages. Section 2 and section 3 in the APQ within our 7 pages. Section 2 is about offer and added value. So this is about service, customers, pain points, innovation, and that all important question 2.5, which space asset are you going to use and why? So quite a lot in there as well. You've probably got a page and a half maybe to communicate all of that. And the same for section 3. We're looking at target and impact here, specific target market, not the entire world market is worth 63.4 billion and we're going to get 0.01% of it. Flip it around, do it the other way. We're targeting this piece over this period of time and it's supported by. Customer engagement comes into this one. Being able to provide a letter of support or engagement from your customer, even at this early stage, is incredibly well received. So if you can do the groundwork with your customer at any level of engagement, then that would be fantastic. And please make sure, as I say, that you can identify how this fits into your business roadmap. So very much making sure that that target and impact is well articulated. So I said this before, the APQ is the same for both the feasibility and the demonstration project, and all of the information is in that document space. I think we might skip the next one. Can we quickly look at the next slide? No, we can't. I'll go even faster. What can I do to prepare? So what do you need to do here? Prepare, engage, review, and follow this cycle. So if you haven't already registered your company on ESA's supplier database, then it would be a good thing to do that at the stage you are filling in your APQ. It isn't a terribly difficult process. Neither is it entirely simple. So please don't leave it to the last minute. You cannot be awarded a contract unless you have completed this. And I know that might look like an awfully long way away, but sometimes when you press the little question mark buttons in ESA, in EMITS, there's nothing there. So make sure that you look for that information and that you can complete that in advance. As I said, review the business model canvas. That's also in that document section. So please do make use of the tools that they've given you. refine your idea with those discussions and critical friend, explore those gaps in your knowledge, genuinely talk to the centres of excellence, please, because they might be able to make connections for you with other companies who've got that missing piece of expertise that you need. There are guidance notes in the APQ, very tiny italics, don't skim over them. The devil is in the detail here, so please, please do take them and have a look. One of the good things to do on the Business Applications website is have a look at the existing ESA projects. If you find a project that is very similar to yours, it does not mean that they would not consider it, but you need to be very, very clear then on your USP and understanding what your innovation is. It could be that you're approaching a different market. So don't discount yourself, have the conversation and figure out if that's something that would work. Attend an APQ surgery or workshop. As part of this series that the South Coast Centre of Excellence are doing, there is going to be a workshop in, I think, about 2 weeks' time that would take you through the APQ in great detail in person. We're going to work with you if that's something you want to do. And thereafter, there'll be some surgery sessions a couple of weeks after that, if that's something that you need. There is not a daft question in any of this. If you don't know the answer to it, then it can't be daft. So please, please do ask. Okay, next slide, please. I'm on the downhill stretch now. Press all the buttons. If you're going to do this and you're going to apply for this, then please, please commit to doing it. This is not something I would suggest you go in half-hearted with. Do the groundwork. Make sure that the majority of the work that you do is at this APQ stage, because it will absolutely reap the benefits for you when you move to outline proposal and full proposal stage. So use the team that you have around you now, who are here to support you to make sure that you have a successful application, and do all of the work now, and the information will flow for you, I promise you. Know what you are, where you're going, which space asset you're using, and why. I keep saying it because it's really, really important. That connection with your customer, letters of support, they don't have to come in just now. They can come in through the process. Some people have even brought their customers to pitch. It is very, very difficult to say no when your customer is banging their fist on the table saying, is it ready yet? Can we have it? So think about that level of engagement and the problems that you are solving and the challenges for your customer. And you might find they're more than happy to spend 10 minutes to come along and say, genuinely, we're investing, or we want this proposition, or we need this because of X, Y, and Z. This bit looks a bit bonkers, but then I've been in bids for about 20 years and I genuinely enjoy it. This is, you're at the pointy end of genuinely making a new thread for your business and a new challenge. So it is exciting. It shouldn't be hard and boring. It should be hard and exciting, and you should really, really want to enjoy what you're doing. So please, please make sure that you put all of your effort into this. And as I say, you will absolutely reap the benefits. Okay, I think this is my last slide. And I think I've already said all this, so that's marvelous. Don't just jump in. Time is so precious now. You need to make sure that the effort that you put into this is really well deserved. So make sure that what you do, you sound check it, you talk to your ambassador, you talk to the South Coast Centre of Excellence, make sure that you use the people around you who are here to support you. There is no tick list in the background at ESA that says, yes, this one will be successful and this one will not. Each opportunity is genuinely reviewed on a case-by-case basis, which is kind of a double-edged sword, because it means that we can't say to you, if you do this, 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 and this, it will get through. But it also means that it gives you the opportunity to have some flexibility, and they are genuinely interested in what you have to offer. So if you can bring your enthusiasm and your engagement across in the written word and in the pitch, that counts for an awful lot. I had somebody once who started a pitch with a massive sigh. Please try not to do that, because it's terribly off-putting for everybody who is really wanting you to succeed. So bring that energy and enthusiasm, and bring the team members with you who actually can answer the questions that they've got, sometimes project, technical, commercial, and that will be quite sufficient. Or a customer, here you go, engage your customers. Be really clear on your innovation. There are questions in each of the 3 documents that ask about innovation. If you can articulate that clearly, then that's really, really fantastic in terms of the marking. ESA project management is a very waterfall project management system. It is not by any stretch of the imagination agile. Having said that, if you operate an agile project management system in-house. That is absolutely fine as long as you meet the milestones and criteria as set out by ESA and that you will have agreed to. So just bear that in mind. It can look quite cumbersome. It is there for a reason, but there are things that you can obviously do in-house to make sure that you've met that criteria and make that simpler for yourselves. Don't just do your competitor analysis once and pop it on the shelf. We all know, if we've done bids before, that it's out of date as soon as you've written it. And we all know particularly how quickly things are moving. Space is possibly one of the fastest moving industries in terms of innovation and change and people disrupting the norm, if we even have a steady enough state to have one. So do make sure that you look at your competitor analysis and look at adjacent markets as well to see what's happening there. Risks is something you have to talk about even in your APQ at this early stage. So identify your risks, really look at how you can start to mitigate those. I would say that probably the pandemic is still worthy of mention in terms of a risk, whether that is access to sites for demonstration projects, component parts, whatever it might be. If it is something you have considered and mitigated, then please put it down. Don't just overlook it and assume, oh, we've done it, so it's not a problem. You need to show that you've considered this. And I think the last point I've got here is to think about the return on investment for UK PLC. As I said earlier, ESA are interested in a very well-bounded project with a successful outcome. And in the case of feasibility, that could be disproving it. But the return on investment for UK PLC, who is investing taxpayers' money, is quite critical in this decision-making process, because actually what they'd like to see is your success. They would like to be able to come back in 5 or 10 years' time, see that you've led the way, broken new ground, stabilised, and potentially are doing it again, or working with another company. So it's all about growth for the UK through the application of satellite technology in your business. I think that might be it. I have a final slide, I think, that shows you these wonderful folk spread around the business, of which Alan is one. So we've got Ken up in Scotland, Paul in the Midlands and North East, and Andy down in the South West. Down there on the bottom is the South Coast Centre of Excellence. As I say, we do have these regional ambassadors. I think the fact that most things are online now means that the regions are a little fuzzy now. So as Alan said, he's here to support you, even though he is not from the Southeast. So I think the last slide gives you some contact details. If, I know, I couldn't help but think of Ghostbusters, I'm sorry. So if you would like some more support, and this is something that you think would be of interest to you, in the first instance, please contact the South Coast Centre of Excellence. There are more events like this running. We are going into more detail on the application, more detail on how to write. And if you contact them on that email address or get in touch with Louise or Vicky or Chloe, then they'll be able to tell you more about that. Alan's details are on there as well. You can also find him on Twitter and LinkedIn. He posts loads of really interesting information on LinkedIn. Sorry, Alan, I think you do. And my details are on the bottom there, should you have any specific questions that you think I can help you with. That was as fast as I could do it. Lou, I'm going to hand back to you. I am so sorry that I have rattled through, but I hope that was helpful. Is she back?
Okay. Yes, I am back. Thank you so much, Victoria. That was, and Alan as well, fantastic. You know, to hear about the space sector and obviously to hear about the ESA Business Applications Program and really get some kind of depth and insight. I mean, notice we don't currently have any questions in the Q&A. I, however, do have questions. So I was going to ask Victoria and Alan, what is the, I guess, the success rate, you know, for everybody who kind of puts together an APQ, how many of them tend to, you know, go through into the proposal, the full proposal stage?
Alan, do you want to go first?
More than do on the competitive side of things. You know, with the competitive thematic calls, they're very specific, you know, and there's one winner, maybe two across Europe. Whereas with the open call, and this is why it's important to engage with an ambassador. With the open call, you are presenting your idea for a project. That is what ESA's funding. They're not funding a business. They're not funding a service. They're funding a project to get the service to market. And you do that on your own value and your own worth. So you make your case, and hopefully ESA goes with it. You know, I would say that there is a much higher rate of success for those who come through the ambassador route than for those who just submit and give it their best go without engaging with us.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think it's probably worth saying, if you do find a specific call that you think that's the one I'm going to go for, and you don't win it, there is nothing stopping you from reapplying through with direct negotiation with the same idea. So you can put it into the open call then. And again, if you've had any feedback on that competitive call, you can then discuss it with your ambassador and put it through to direct negotiation.
And we have had some success with companies that have done that have looped around and come back through the APQ successfully after not getting on the competitors.
But Alan's definitely right. Do use your ambassador. I have sat in pitches historically where companies have been called out for not using the resources available to them. So not using places like ULUI's, the South Coast Centre of Excellence, not using the ambassadors, and it's quite obvious when somebody has come through and hasn't been able to take advantage of those insights that we have through the work that we've already done. I think it does make a huge difference.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. We have another question from Paulette. It says, is this just for UK-based companies, or can a UK company have EU partners?
I'll take this one. This is for companies based in the UK, UK registered companies. However, you may be applying as a consortium, and your consortium may have partners, maybe not just EU, they may be elsewhere. Your partners elsewhere, outside the UK, will not get any of the funding that comes from this program. If they are looking for their own funding, they can go to their delegation within ESA if they're part of the Business Applications program, and they can try and get their funding on their side. Now different countries have different funding levels. You know, if you may be working with someone in, and I'm making this up, Finland, say, and in Finland they funded 80%. So actually, your partner could get 80% of their costs covered, whereas in the UK you'd be at 50%. So if you're applying for in the UK, you're a UK-based company. This is about a return on investment to the UK. There's nothing to stop you from being a consortium with other partners, but they won't get their share of that money.
So we've done applications before where, for example, a UK company and a company in Germany were working together, and they both needed letters of support from their delegation. So they were able to put in one application, but they had to have support from both of their national delegations to do that. So it can be done. It absolutely can be done. And Alan's absolutely right. If you've got to buy component parts or data from America, not ideal, and genuinely they don't want the money to leave the UK. However, there are some instances where if you can demonstrate it would cost you 10 times the amount of money to buy it in the UK, then there is some discussion to be had. And I think that's probably as flexible as I can be on that response. So it genuinely goes back to case by case basis. Have all your information ready, and make sure that you can answer all those questions, and there will definitely be a conversation to be had there.
I'd also caveat that, say, this program is not a funnel for ESA to sell its wares. Okay, ESA has lots of Earth observation data. It doesn't have any telecoms. That's all commercial. Increasingly, Earth observation data is coming, certainly in higher resolutions, from the commercial sector. GNSS is operating in partnership with ESA and another agency within Europe. But as Victoria said, if your data source has to be from a commercial operator in Japan, then okay. This is not about funneling the use of ESA data. This is about the UK and ESA working together to make sure that all sectors of the economy are using the data that is raining down upon our heads anyway, that is already being generated, to make sure we use it to its best use.
Okay, that's great, guys. I'm conscious of the time. There's one question from Anthony that I just wanted to get answered from you before before we wrap up. What's the progress reporting burden and financial spending tracking needed once the project's underway?
I like the use of the word burden there. I hear you, Anthony. I don't know in any great detail. I have to say the majority of the work that I have done for ESA has been at this positioning end at the front. I do know, having contracted myself with ESA, that I would anticipate there would be at least a monthly report and tracking responsibility, and that there would be information probably a report at each milestone, but you would agree that at your contract negotiation. So there is some information on that document space that I told you about to look at understanding how ESA manage their contracts. If you cannot find the answer in there easily, or you'd like to have a discussion, get in touch with us and we'll find out the answer for you in slightly more detail. I would say probably at least once a month and with every milestone payment. Okay,
that's great. So I think we're finishing bang on time, which is fantastic. I just want to say a big thank you to the team behind the scenes who've been running the webinar, to Alan and Victoria for talking us through the ESA Business Applications Programme. As Alan said, there'll be slides that we can make available to the delegates here today. And finally, mentioned it a few times, there is an in-person one-day workshop where you'll get hands-on support from both Alan and Victoria. It's scheduled for March 9th, and it's here at our offices at the Technopole in Portsmouth. It's a limited cohort, so we put in quite a lot of resource to make sure that you can kind of give really, really dedicated support on a kind of a one-to-one basis. So there are very limited spaces. If you are interested after hearing the webinar and you've got, as Victoria said, a very clear idea about what it is that you want to get support funding for, then please email me at louise.butt@port.ac.uk, and we'll obviously share those details as well in the next day or two. Okay, so from us at the centre, thank you for your time and good day. Bye-bye.